I'm here to make inflammatory statements on the internet, and then turn my notifications off.
After the failure of recent Marvel movie featuring 3 strong female characters that check all the diversity boxes, one would have thought that the Marvels would be a sure shot success, but unfortunately that was not the case. The Marvels failed so badly at the box office that it wasn't even funny. I was low-key disappointed because there was a time when Marvel movies were celebrated at the cinema. People used to treat it like a fun day out. Parents used to take their kids out to watch their favorite superhero movie and spend some time together. Now I'm sure Disney is looking at the overall box office collections and are wondering how to course correct their current downfall. So I did the homework for them. I looked at how Marvel is managing their IPs these days and what they were doing wrong. I could be incorrect with my assessment, but that's where your interaction comes in. Let me know in the comment section below if I'm wrong about something or if there's anything that I missed out. Say what you want to say about Miss Marvel, Ironheart, American Chavez, or any other recent Marvel superhero that you have seen in Disney Plus series or the movies, they will never be as famous or will never be household names like Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, or the Hulk. I'm sorry if you're offended by it, but that's the truth. Now suppose the normie is picking an action figure for a friend they know who is into Marvel Universe. Which action figure are they more likely to choose? Iron Man or Ironheart? Leaving gender of the characters and the audience aside, although we will be covering that soon, Iron Man will be more popular choice among normies, only because, well, the character is more popular than Ironheart. I'm not going to go through character arcs or anything, but I'm simply talking about the popularity of the characters. When Marvel movies began to come out, they came out strong. Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, Thor, these are popular characters. And by the time the first Avengers movie came out, the fans and average moviegoers were on board with what Marvel was going for, because Marvel laid out such strong foundations for their cinematic universe. Even lesser known heroes like Guardians of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange, and Ant-Man received attention.
Who?
And right now you might say, Angel, those IPs were big and had an established fan base. Yes, they did, but you can write it on a check and take it to a bank when I say that the audience for Guardians of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange, and Ant-Man comics was nowhere near as big as Spider-Man, Iron Man, Hulk, or Thor. You are not going to get any money, but I guarantee that check won't bounce.
What the hell did you just say?
By the time Infinity War came out, all the heroes in MCU lineup until that point became household names and fans were excited to see what was going to happen next. And to a certain degree, Endgame delivered. What I'm trying to say is that Marvel started off strong because they put their best foot forward. It is something that can also be seen when Netflix got their hands on Daredevil and Jessica Jones. Both of these series were dark and were intended for mature audiences. And the fan excitement only grew more when it was revealed that Luke Cage and Iron Fist will be joining in as well to lead to the Defenders series. Now whether you think the Defenders delivered or not, that's your opinion. Entertainment is subjective at the end of the day. But once again, Marvel put their best foot forward with Daredevil, making it dark and gritty. And from the success of that series, we got Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and the Defenders. Yeah, we also got the Punisher, but since he was not part of the Defenders, I will leave him out for the time being. Marvel started off really strong, but Endgame really was, pardon the pun, the endgame for Marvel's cinematic universe. There is a reason some fans claim that MCU died with Tony Stark, and I can see where they are coming from because I share the same feeling. Kevin Feige and everyone working on Endgame knew how it was going to end, so plans should have been put in motion to introduce the next big hero to the MCU. Instead, we got the Eternals. A handful of people knew about the comics, which is more than the amount of people who remember the movie. I doubt even you, my dear viewer, remembered that the movie existed. But before Eternals, we had Black Widow, a character that should have had her own standalone movie a long time ago, and Shang-Chi, the Legend of Ten Rings, a movie and character which Marvel along with many MCU fans seem to have forgotten about. Which is weird because Shang-Chi was a decent movie with some really good action sequences and a decent character arc. But the question is Shang-Chi as popular as Iron Man or Thor? And the answer is no. Black Widow was a step in the right direction, but it was a movie that came out a little too late. And for those who have seen Endgame know what I'm talking about.
Let me go.
No. Please, no.
It's
So why wouldn't Marvel bring other famous characters in the MCU? Yes, Spider-Man No Way Home was a phenomenal success, but nostalgia played a huge role in the movie's success, something I will touch upon later. But with Spider-Man's rights in dispute because Sony knows how much of a moneymaker it is, there are still a lot of characters that Marvel could have worked with. X-Men, Fantastic Four, probably introduced Deadpool in the mix. Marvel could have come out strong, but instead they chose lesser known characters. And if the start of a new phase features characters that the audience cannot easily identify, then you cannot blame fans if they choose not to turn up to watch the movies at all. For those wondering if I'm right or wrong, please take a moment to look into something called mere exposure effect, which can be described as a psychological phenomenon in which people prefer things that they are familiar with. The more frequently people are exposed to something, the more they tend to prefer it. I'll leave a link to it in the description box below if you fancy reading it. But this psychological phenomenon perfectly encapsulates the success and failure of MCU and Marvel in general. Over the course of MCU, people grew familiar with Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, and many other heroes. But when Marvel introduced lesser-known characters post-Endgame, people were less than ecstatic, especially when you consider that there was no hint of those characters pre-Infinity War. Another issue that has been brought up consistently over the past couple of months is the quality of Marvel movies and how they disappointed fans. Let's start with the Eternals. Who the hell they are and where the heck they were when Thanos snapped half of universe away? Yes, the movie tried to answer these questions, but you really expect a MCU fan to believe creatures as strong as the Eternals have never been heard of before and did not do anything to stop Thanos. Although the movie tried to justify the reason, it cannot be as bad as losing half the creation in the universe. Once again, Marvel chose to introduce the wrong characters at the wrong time, and the writing quality didn't help either. Let's take a look at Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness, a movie that had every Marvel fan excited because it was directed by Sam Raimi. But when the film came out, it felt more like a Marvel movie than a Raimi movie. Now, before everyone grabs their pitchforks and start lighting me up like that police officer from Resident Evil 4, here's what I mean. Spider-Man 1 and 2 are considered by many as one of the best superhero movies ever made. So much so that they are forever embedded in the minds and hearts of the fans, as witnessed by the overall reaction to No Way Home. The reason for that was because Raimi knew the source material and he was given freedom to work with it. which unfortunately cannot be said about Spider-Man 3 because Sony wanted Raimi to use Venom when he wanted to stick with Sandman. This is why Spider-Man 3 feels more like a Sony movie than a Raimi movie. Now coming back to Multiverse of Madness, and we have a movie plagued by rewrites, so much so that the movie was getting rewritten on the day the film was being shot. So much so that Elizabeth Olsen, internet's favorite mummy, stopped reading scripts because she was frustrated with the constant changes. And I can understand scripts can change because of one issue or another, but when one of your lead actresses is frustrated because of the constant changes and stops caring to read the script, you know you messed up as a studio. So yes, it felt more like a Marvel movie than a Raimi movie. Thor, Love and Thunder, I can't, dude. I just can't. I can't talk about how bad the movie is without losing my cool, okay? So let's skip that.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Black Panther Wakanda Forever is probably the only movie which I would cut some slack. The movie had some huge boots to fill with the demise of Chadwick Boseman, and the creators of the movie had to work their way around it. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which introduced MCU fans to the next big baddie, Kang, was a commercial flop, I think. I mean, really underperformed. And yes, some movies did enjoy commercial and critical success. Movies like Shang-Chi, No Way Home, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But that also brings us to its issues. Sony holds the rights for Spider-Man, so we don't know when Spider-Man will appear next in the MCU. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was the last movie in the series, and Shang-Chi seemed to have been forgotten by the audience and Marvel alike. What the audience is left with are movies that are not only disappointing, but also fail to generate revenue at the box office. Another issue that is quite visible with MCU movies is the quality of CGI. I mean, look at this. Someone at Marvel looked at this frame and thought, this is fine. Let's release the film. I believe it was last year when several VFX artists spoke against Disney and Marvel and spilled the tea on how horrible it is to work for the company. Victoria Alonso, who used to work for Disney, was also name-dropped. Apparently she bullied VFX artists and a lot of people were afraid of her.
Well, I finally found it. Willy Wonka's Double Standards Factory. A place where women get away with things men could never dream of. Let's go inside.
So, yeah. Poor CGI due to overworked VFX artists working for a company that wants to churn their movies and TV shows as quickly as possible. If Marvel wants to bounce back, they need to bring decent writers on board. Preferably people who worked on the comics and know the characters. And I don't mean recent comics because we all know they are not performing well, but the old classic ones that helped establish those characters. Instead of churning out a new movie every few months, maybe scale it down to 1 or 2 movies in a year, so it feels like an event rather than a regular occurrence. That would give VFX artists some time to work on CGI and also Marvel to gather feedback and implement it in their upcoming projects. But while we're on the topic of writing, let's take a look at the writing of Marvel Comics, not the MCU. It is no secret that American comic books are getting their butts handed to them thanks to Japanese comics, aka manga. It will never cease to amaze me that Demon Slayer, one IP from Japan, managed to outsell the entire American comics all together in their home turf. That shows us 2 things. One is that Demon Slayer is awesome and you need to check it out. No, really, you should.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
And 2, American comics coming out these days have terrible writing. And that is because of the terrible writers working on that comic book series. For example, take a look at Sally's what's her name? Kelly Sue DeConnick, the writer of Captain Marvel.
And if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book. Problem solved.
I tend to be pretty optimistic, but in this one I'm worried. I'm straight worried.
Why?
Because stores are closing at a phenomenal rate. Independent comic sales are down. Mainstream comic sales are down, except for the top 3 or 5 books are up, and everything in the mid list is way down. Numbers that used to be numbers that would get you canceled are now like, no, that's a hit.
Case in point, when you have writers on board who are telling their customers and fans to take the business elsewhere instead of taking legitimate criticism, legitimate feedback on board, then don't be surprised when they do. When you have writers injecting their personal politics in books that may alienate a portion of their fan base, then don't be surprised when that portion of the fan base decides to walk away. But unfortunately, the issue doesn't stop there with Marvel Comics. Over the last couple of years, Marvel comic book writers have changed origins of certain characters and even went so far as to destroy them. A perfect example would be the recent Punisher series written by Jason Aaron. Yes, we are going there, and if I had to sit through it, so will you. I'm a huge fan of the Punisher character, okay? Heck, my first cosplay was the Punisher. So it came as a complete surprise to me when I found out that in Jason Aaron's run of the Punisher, Frank's wife was resurrected by the Hand, and she tells him that she was going to ask for divorce the day she got shot. She even cheats on him, as far as I can remember, donates half of his money to charity, and the other half she takes it with her. And at the end, Punisher drops his guns and leaves with a few children, and he decides to take care of. And I was like,
What the Daddy, chill.
While I can understand the author's intention of trying to bring the Punisher's character arc to an end, fans were divided, to say the least. Actually, I'm going to say that they were pissed. I know I was. On the contrary, the Punisher in the live-action series did the character more justice. The back and forth between Daredevil and the Punisher, the concept of justice and punishment, Punisher giving up completely when he is made to believe that he shot innocent people when he was gunning for Russo, aka Jigsaw. There were many avenues that could have been explored, but instead we were given a story that completely destroys the character. Completely destroys the Punisher's character and his legacy. All because the writer wanted to conclude the arc he saw best. And this is unfortunately the biggest problem with Marvel Comics. We have writers working on established IPs and writing characters as they perceive them, rather than how they were established in the first place.
What the f*** is this piece of shit?
They are working on Captain America comics, and instead of wondering what would Steve Rogers do in this situation, they are asking, what would I do if I was Steve Rogers? This is why people are accusing Marvel and many comic book writers of self-inserting themselves in established IPs. And when that happens, that is when you get character arcs that are more in line with the core tenets of the author rather than the character the author is trying to write. And since that seems to be a recurring problem with all recent comics, which would explain why people aren't buying them, which would also explain why old and classic issues continue to outsell new and recent issues. And look, I'm not going to sit over here and pretend that I know how to write a comic. I don't. But I have written a few stories, and I can tell you it is difficult to keep your personal ideology out of something that is coming out of your mind, out of your thoughts. You can't, but you have to. Otherwise, you will end up alienating a portion of your audience. Also, you can't please everyone, okay? I understand that. If you try to please everyone, you will end up pleasing no one. You need to think of your target audience. If comic book writers keep that one thing in mind when they are writing the stories, they will actually deliver a good story. If they realize that a part of the story may not resonate with a good amount of people, then it is probably a good idea to leave it out. If the story you're trying to tell is only going to appeal to a small audience, then it is probably not a good idea to explore that story arc or maybe change it a little bit.
Most of these new writers don't have the love of comics like these older writers had. And all they care about is, how can I put myself in the book? No, we don't care what you would do if you were Iron Man. We don't care who you are. You're writing Tony Stark. You're not writing yourself in a book. If that's the case, write your own comic with you in it. No one will read it because nobody cares. People grew up, are growing up loving Peter Parker, loving Miles Morales, loving all these Captain America. We don't need you to put your input in it. Just write Steve Rogers. Don't write Steve Rogers. What would Steve Rogers be if I was Steve Rogers? That's not how it works. But that's again how most of these new people write nowadays. That's why most of the stuff is shit. Because we don't care what you would do, because we don't care about your life whatsoever. Just write a book, get paid for what you do, get paid for what you're supposed to be doing, and make it a good story.
And now, my dear viewer, you must be wondering, why am I covering Marvel Comics in a video that focuses on Marvel Cinematic Universe? Because it has a ripple effect. The movies are based on the comics, and if the comics are written in a preachy sense with agendas being pushed, then people will not read those comics and will not watch the movies that are based on those comics, especially the ones that has recent characters like American Chavez, Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, Ironheart, and so on. And once again, if people are not familiar with the character or associate the character with a book filled with the author's politics, then they are less likely to turn up to watch the movie adaptation of that book. At the end of the day, entertainment is there to allow people to escape. People want to escape the mediocrity of their lives and watch a character fall only to rise again, stronger than before. They want to see a character get involved in a storyline that would engross them. They do not want to be preached about white privilege or male gaze, not by the writers, not by the directors, and definitely not by the actors.
I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him.
We're hoping to continue to push the boundaries of the roles we can play.
By that, of course, we mean white people roles.
Oh my God, I'd love to play white people roles.
No, me too. White people roles are the best. I mean, an alcoholic, divorced, single father fighting for custody.
Oh yeah, an alcoholic housewife whose husband's affair drives her deeper into alcohol.
How about this? An alcoholic school teacher who must put their love of alcohol aside to inspire their class of inner city youths. White people roles.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning!
Do your homework!
If the writers are focused on pushing a message, then the message is all the reader and viewer will see. People will cringe and will not show up again if they notice that the message that keeps popping up is not an anomaly but a regular occurrence. I was glad to see Bob Iger realizing that, but if Marvel needs to do right by their audience, they need to start with the writers in the writing room. Change the writers, bring in people who can focus on the story and not on the message. I know MCU began with The Incredible Hulk starring Edward Norton, but it was Iron Man that got the ball rolling, and from there on until Infinity War, the audience was given a taste of what the MCU was building up, and it was done in a way that felt natural. In Iron Man, Samuel L. Jackson teased the Avengers and audience was left wondering who will be included in the Avengers. Then we had Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, introduction to Hawkeye in Thor. These characters were brought together slowly to build that iconic shot in the Avengers that made people cheer in the cinema.
That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
Then they were teased with a villain that people had to Google when they went home. And then we were introduced to the events that began the storyline of Infinity Stones. But at the same time, we were introduced to new heroes, their stories, and how they were brought together and how they parted ways. All the while the threat of Thanos lingered in the background. And when the threat finally emerged, fans were on board with whatever MCU was cooking. Now let's take a look at what MCU is cooking recently, from Shang-Chi to the Marvels. What is MCU building up? Are they building up a new team of Avengers? Are they introducing mutants? If so, where does Shang-Chi and the Eternals fit into that timeline? You know what's going on there? What about She-Hulk and Moon Knight? How do they fit in the MCU? I know MCU is working on something and they are building up for something, but at this current moment in time, it is not clear. If the vision is not, clearly conveyed to the viewers and the message is not conveyed properly, then it will be difficult for the audience to get excited about the next product in line, as we can clearly see with the Marvels and the drop in box office collections. To put in context, imagine you're traveling on a train with a couple of people you know, or you think you know. As the journey goes on, some people decide to get off at a few stations and more people hop on. As time goes on, you're surrounded by new faces that you know nothing about, and they start talking to you, but whatever they're telling you is boring and uninteresting, which would result in the journey itself being boring and uninteresting. And it would suck a whole lot more if you don't know where the train is heading and what will happen when you reach your destination. Now you can soldier on, or you can get off the train and probably jump on a new one, and set a new destination. See what I'm doing there? Did you catch the metaphor? And yes, Marvel can release as many roadmaps as they want for their phases. If it is not visible in the movies and the series they're churning out, people will get off the bandwagon and will not return, which is a huge concern when you consider the following issue. It is no secret that there is so much content out there when it comes to Marvel Cinematic Universe that it will blow your mind. From movies with ensemble cast to TV series with budgets that Marvel can make a movie with, MCU has it all. Each entry was used to push MCU forward. Lord only knows in which direction, but Kang is definitely out of the picture. And unfortunately, that also plays a factor in MCU's downfall. When MCU movies came out, we all knew we had to see them at the cinema, and if we happened to miss them, we can catch them on DVD or Blu-ray. That was until Disney Plus dropped. I can understand Disney trying to make their streaming service a success by turning Marvel's Cinematic Universe into TV series, but that also meant that MCU was now divided. It is no longer the case of using one medium to push the cinematic universe. Now there are multiple series involved that requires a person to subscribe to a new service, which you have to pay for unless you want to sail the 7 seas. And that cost is on top of the price you pay when you go to the cinema. Which brings us to the point, if a person is paying for Disney Plus who also knows that sooner rather than later a recently released MCU movie will hit Disney Plus service, then what's the point of going to the cinema and pay an additional fees when the person knows they can just wait for a couple of months and watch it from the comfort of their homes? And yes, I can understand that the experience of watching a movie at the cinema is better than watching it at home, and yes, some people may choose to do so. But after the pandemic and the financial crisis, people have to be smart with their cash. There was an article published by Vice more than 5 years ago saying that millennials no longer fancy going out. And yes, this article and the one published in The Guardian focuses on millennials refusing to go out and partying, the Vice article states that people they interviewed found it expensive. The same millennials Disney Plus is targeting as their audience is refusing to go out. They would rather stay in, and couple that with Marvel projects being released on Disney Plus frequently, ask yourself this: do you think they would rush to go watch the movie at the cinema, or would they rather stay in? And before you answer that question, take into account earlier what I said about the quality of Marvel movies being in decline. Another issue I want to touch upon is how the MCU is now split into TV series and movies, and how closely they are linked with each other. For example, you don't need to see WandaVision to understand Multiverse of Madness. However, things happened in the series that led to the events of Doctor Strange movie, making the series an important chapter that you need to see if you want to get the full picture. Same thing with the character of Kate Bishop. If you see her character in upcoming movies, you'll probably struggle to understand her trials and tribulations if you have not seen Hawkeye the series. An issue made even more evidently clear with the Marvels movie, as it features one character that had a small role in Multiverse of Madness and the other who had a series with the lowest viewership when compared to other MCU shows. So the only mainstream character that people can identify is Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel, which doesn't help if you're not a big fan of the character, and trust me, there are plenty out there who are not. My point is, Marvel thought it would be a cool idea to introduce characters with their own mini-series that deals with their own origin stories, and then thrust them into cinematic adventures that is larger than life. And while I can understand their approach, because releasing an origin story at the cinema is a lot more complicated than releasing it on their own network, which will also boost the numbers of that said network, the reality is that their approach didn't work. They thought the fans would like it, but unfortunately that is not the case. Fans like Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America because they saw characters and their origin stories. They saw Iron Man go from being a merchant of death to a savior of life. They saw Thor go from an egotistical god to a humble, self-sacrificing man. They saw a weak man with a heart of gold to a super soldier ready to sacrifice his life for his country and his fellow soldiers. Those origin stories define the characters, and their journey of self-discovery holds importance. If Marvel would put a character's origin story on a network that people are leaving in droves, then don't be offended if fans or consumers struggle to connect with your characters because their origin stories are lost to them. Disney has to be the only company in the world, followed by DC by the looks of it, that literally bites the hands that feed it. I would have said Netflix, but I think they've learned their lesson. Point is, doesn't matter which company you are or how big do you think you are always at the mercy of your fans. And yes, I'm saying fans and not consumers. Consumers go to the cinema, watch a movie, and probably buy a physical copy when it comes out.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
Fans are the ones that stand in queue to meet the stars. They are the ones that buy the merchandise. They are the ones that support the company by tweeting about it or making YouTube videos. And in recent years, Disney has been doing a great disservice to the fans by humiliating them. Oh, you don't like Rey Skywalker? You must be a misogynist. You don't like Captain Marvel? Oh, you must be an incel. Oh, you don't like Little Mermaid? You must be a racist. I mean, take a look at the recent remarks made by the director of the Marvels. Look, I'm not saying that there may have been no hateful comments, but if there's one thing I learned from the entire Last Jedi and Rey Mary Sue Skywalker debacle is that legitimate criticism is often chalked up as hateful. Disney needs to understand that they cannot go around disrespecting their fans and need to make it clear to the people they have employed that they should do the same. I can understand the need to address hateful messages, but if those hateful people really make a small portion of a large fandom that is overwhelmingly positive, then why make a big deal out of it? Yes, every fandom has toxic fans, and Marvel is no different. But where things go sideways is when Disney mixes genuine criticism with toxicity. Fans have been incredibly vocal in the past about the way Disney has been approaching their IPs. Disney, in all its infinite wisdom, decided to ignore all of it, making fans abandon Disney altogether. What once made a minority of fan base has become a majority, and it shows. People go to the cinema to escape the mediocrity of their lives, okay, and be part of an adventure that features characters that they would aspire to be. They do not want to be preached about social issues in a superhero movie. They want to see a hero's journey rather than the message of the author, director, or the actor. All Disney had to do was focus on the hero's journey rather than the message. And you know you royally messed up when South Park joins in and dunks on you.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
And yes, I can understand the whole creative liberty argument, but to that my counter argument is, if you are adapting something, from a book or any other form of medium, then why change it? Keep it the same. Take a look at The Witcher, okay? Netflix had huge plans for the series, which seems to be going in the gutter after the walking, talking Witcher encyclopedia Henry Cavill left. Why? Because the people involved with the writing thought they could do a better job. Obviously, they couldn't. And if they could, they wouldn't be working as a screenwriter, for The Witcher. They would be busy writing their own novels. At the end of the day, fans who have read the novels, comics, seen the animated series and so on, will have expectations on how the story is going to unfold, how certain characters should look and be portrayed on screen. They are probably more familiar with the source material than people involved with making the live action movie. So it's probably a good idea to listen to what they have to say rather than insult them with hateful labels.
I was not very steeped in the comics.
I didn't read any comics or do any research.
I wasn't familiar with comics. I wasn't familiar with the movies.
We didn't lean into a whole lot of the history of the comic books.
Yeah, candidly, we were not enormous comic fans.
I wasn't super into superhero comics when I was a kid. I read a lot of indie press stuff.
First thing I was told is don't read the comics.
Really?
As a creator, they put you in a bubble. They don't let you talk about any of the other projects, right?
They're up for anything.
We ultimately decided to redefine it for the series and thought that it worked better for the story that we're trying to tell.
Did you ever read you've never read the comic?
When the DVD comes out, I'm going to read a Thor comic book and just see where we went wrong.
It may come as a surprise to you, my dear viewer, but the first Iron Man movie came out in 2008. And the first Avengers came out in 2012. And at the time of me writing the script for this video, we may have entered in 2024. That means the first Avengers came out 12 years ago. Which means that people who were 15 at the time are close to 27. People who had not hit puberty at the time are probably in a relationship, probably got married, already regretting that decision and are thinking about getting a divorce. Okay, that was a bit overdramatic, but the point is, people who were blown away by the ensemble cast 12 years ago have grown up and probably grown out of the whole superhero genre. Kids who were 14 or 15 at the time are probably in colleges or universities now and are probably exploring different genre of movies. And yes, in the last decade we've had a roller coaster of a ride with MCU, but with Endgame it felt like it was the end of the line. People in their 30s, 40s or even 50s now may not find current Marvel interesting. the comical take on She-Hulk,
Oh, I thought it was about getting my butt tight as hell. Up top.
Roast Jen, I'm your cousin.
Miss Marvel, and the whole coming-of-age story, making Moon Knight a PG-13 affair when it should have been straight-up R-rated. These outings may appeal to younger audience, but it may not necessarily appeal to a now older crowd that is ready to move on after Endgame. And I'm going off the script over here, but what they did with Moon Knight is just disgraceful. I mean, they could have had a mature storyline with deep character moments that explore psychological trauma set in a violent setting, but instead they threw in a globe-trotting adventure that featured kaiju battles at the end. Moon Knight could have been for Disney Plus what Deadpool was for Fox. I mean, has anyone read the comics? They are violent, and someone at Disney Plus thought, PG-13. Honestly, Moon Knight series is what happens when you try to cater to younger audience when you have a character that is clearly intended for mature viewers. Coming back to the script, and Marvel needs to bring out movies or series that cater to its older audience. Now, I'm not saying that every Marvel movie or TV show should feature R-rated violence, but rather it should tackle mature themes like Iron Man did, or maybe what Marvel needs to do is start exploring mature characters like Daredevil, the Punisher. You know, look at Daredevil on Netflix and how popular that was, or even Jessica Jones. And yes, I can understand what Marvel is trying to do right now. Of course, they're trying to target, younger audiences with brand new cast because 15-year-olds today won't know or remember what happened in 2012. That would explain why Marvel is moving on from legacy characters and are introducing new characters that are younger, that younger generation could identify. But the problem is those 15-year-olds are not going to the cinema by themselves. They are being taken by older members of the family who grew up to be the fan of those legacy characters that Marvel is moving on from. And if the grown-ups are not excited to go to the cinema to watch the new generation, then chances are they are taking the younger audiences to either watch something else entirely or dropping the young ones off at the cinema to watch Marvel movies while the older members are going off to watch something else, that appeals to them. And frankly speaking, this would explain why there has been a drop in ticket sales when it comes to Marvel. I would not say this is a major reason, but when you couple that up, with other factors that I have mentioned in the video, yes, the shift in the demographics would impact Disney's pockets. Another issue is that Disney seemed to have been focusing on a small fraction of a larger audience. The women. Look, I gotta be honest, I don't care if the hero is a woman or a man. I grew up watching movies like The Terminator, Terminator 2, Aliens, oh my god, Ripley Allen. I grew up watching series like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Xena, Alias, and Dark Angel. Female characters are not an issue. Emasculating men at the expense of introducing stronger Mary Sue-like characters and leaning into the whole girl power narrative, that's what I don't like. Black Widow was not interesting because she was hot. I mean, she was, but because she carried herself alongside a super soldier, a god, a tech millionaire, and a behemoth that can smash mountains. That's what made her interesting. But when you have series coming out that portrays men as predators, introducing the strongest character out of the blue using CGI from PS3 era, making a superhero break someone's hand and then steal his bike because he's a scumbag for asking a girl to smile, then yes, a lot of men will tune out. There is a reason the term MCU exists, because it signifies all the female characters Marvel has introduced that have replaced the male characters. Once again, I have no issue with female characters being introduced, but at least give them a decent storyline, give them a decent story arc, and stop emasculating men. Okay? If Marvel is if Marvel thinks they can target, female members of the audience, and they can cater it by doing that, by emasculating men in the process, then they got it wrong. Because, and here's the kicker, okay? The female demographic makes a small portion of that audience. I know a lot of people are not gonna like this, but that's the truth. Remember when the Marvels flopped and many outlets blamed men for not turning up to watch the movie? Then it was revealed that men made like 65% of the audience that turned up to watch it, and women only made like 35%. And out of that 35%, only 14% of them were under the age of 25. Oh, hey, look. Men over the age of 25 made 45% of the audience. So I guess I was right when I said people have grown up. Anywho's, so yeah. Moving away from Disney, and a similar case happened in the past with Birds of Prey that also flopped at the box office. For a female-led cast, okay, Birds of Prey's weekend audience was 54% male, and for some reason Screen Rant found it shocking. It's not. Men make up a majority of these audience, so when Marvel and Disney in general is trying to appeal to female demographic, that market is smaller than you think. Also, why are outlets blaming men for not turning up, to see a female-led movie? Why are women not being blamed for not turning up to support other females? There is an interesting Reddit post that I came across while I was doing research that perfectly summed up the entire argument. No one dares to speak the truth, but in the end, women mostly just don't support other women. That is the harsh reality. Ever asked a female MCU fan who she most cares about? Brie? No. The answer is always either Loki, Thor's abs, or other countless male superheroes with shirtless scenes. These are the actual unironic comments from our box office under the Marvels post. Yet time and time again, everything is blamed on men for not showing up to support these female-centric movies, when women don't even care about them in the first place. The Barbie movie is an exception because it is exactly a female-centric movie with Ryan Gosling as the handsome hunk male lead. Anyways, I'm going slightly off topic. Changes are still being made to appeal to female audience while bring down men. It is as if what writers, developers thought process is what they gobble up from the loud internet minority than the general audience. Somebody responded with, "It's been fun 2 weeks on r/box office because of the Marvels. People start saying the quiet part loud in neutral subreddit. If you point out that Disney trying to turn both Marvel and Star Wars to female audience, you won't be downvoted like in the past." And I 100% agree. And with that, I think I need to close this video. I know this was a long one and it took me ages to get together, get everything together. You might not agree with whatever I said in the video, but that's the comment section for, Let me know what you agree and disagree with, and I will try my best to reply to you. Don't forget to rate the video because I really put a lot of time in it. So your upvote or downvote will matter, either way. And if you want to give my life some meaning, please hit the subscribe button, I'm a part-time YouTuber, so your engagement with the channel will help me a lot in the long run. Peace out, angels, and stay awesome.